Hi, the topic I proposed for my research is titled Contextually Evaluating the Current State of Digital Divide and Digital Competence in India. This topic will be supervised by Professor David Lamas and Dr. Talmo Calvet. To quickly introduce myself, my name is Janesh and I graduated last year from Tallinn University with a Master's in Human Computer Interactions. I've had the opportunity to live in two unique countries, India and Estonia. I grew up in a developing country and studied in an advanced European country. When I moved to Tallinn from Mumbai, I could see the positive effects of internet on the Estonian society. I worked with AST.E, which is one of the most advanced e-governance portals in the world, and studied various futuristic subjects like ubiquitous computing and inclusive design. In my course of studies, I realized that most of what we study, design, and create is just for 4 out of 10 people in the world. It's troubling for most researchers to learn that 60% of the world is offline. This motivated me to further study about the digital divide and research on ways to bridge this gap. For the purposes of this research, digital divide refers to people who have internet access versus people who don't. So about 60% of the human race is offline. Over half of these come from just 5 developing countries within this circle. India has a population of 1 billion offline. 85% of the people living here have never accessed Google, and that's about 1/7 of the human race. India is a large country with 600,000 villages and more than 120 languages, so it's not easy to pin down a single reason why so many people are offline or why people are offline most of the times. According to McKinsey and some other researchers, the possible barriers to access could include 1. Having no infrastructure. India has 613,000 villages and most still lack basic broadband access. 2. Low affordability. In the cities and towns where internet connectivity does exist, it's very expensive for the masses. 3. Low usability or usefulness. So hundreds of languages and hundreds of different religions poses contextual challenges for designers to create effective solutions. People may lack the incentive or may find the internet just not useful in their daily lives. 4. Low user capabilities, the ability to use the internet. So the McKinsey mentions that 60% of the adults in India cannot read and write, and that could be a barrier to access. But as a designer, I don't completely agree with this. There are millions of illiterate people in the world who use mobile banking services like M-Pesa, and there's a lot of research available on text-free and graphic-rich interfaces which designers could use to surpass digital literacy barriers. The Government of India has launched various publicly funded initiatives that aim to bridge the large digital divide in India. This includes 1. Improving ICT infrastructure, 2. Investing in public internet access, 3. Shifting towards e-governance, 4. Investing in digital literacy education. So here's where the government has partners with different educational and training institutes to provide citizens with structured or standardized digital literacy courses. The government has launched a body called the National Digital Literacy Mission, which sets up funds to subsidize structured digital literacy education. So many of these initiatives may sound good on paper, but may not be exactly relevant in India's case. This is Microsoft's digital literacy resource, which is available in 60 languages and is used by many public schools or private computer training institutes. Now, most structured digital literacy education programs are taught in this format. These studies are aimed to train people to use personal computers, not smartphones or tablets. The first lesson would be a bit about identifying various computer parts. The second lesson would be about training with Windows operating system and learning Microsoft tools like PowerPoint or Word or Excel. This is a structured digital literacy test by the ICDL, the International Computer Driving License Institute, a body that works with educators and governments around the world and provides digital literacy certification across many countries. So to see how digitally literate a person is, the questions to the user would be something like identify a mouse or a monitor, save a Word document, add a table on Excel. This would be followed by asking and understanding the person's usage patterns, something like do you own a computer or how often do you use one? In both the cases that I mentioned before, it's clear that these formats are heavily dependent on the person's knowledge of personal computers. The problem is that many developing countries like India are entirely skipping the PC generation. India has 900 million cell phone users and will have 650 million smartphones, mainly Android, by 2019. There are over 3 billion Android devices in the world, so it may not be effective to still have digital literacy initiatives, certifications, and training programs solely focused on personal computers. And it can be said that a lot of these government initiatives, such as the National Digital Literacy Mission, focused on structured digital literacy training via PCs, may not be entirely effective to bridge the digital divide in India. Many people in India could be digitally illiterate as per standardized testing. There could be many people who know how to use internet with a smartphone or a tablet, but have no idea how to work around a PC ecosystem, like Windows desktop applications or using a trackpad or a mouse. In many of the government websites, the word digital literacy and digital competency was often interchanged. Although they are similar, there's a slight difference. So, digital literacy is a set of skills required to achieve digital competence. The skills are usually being able to communicate information, process information, or evaluate information using ICT tools and services. Digital competency has a slightly wider scope. It is the smart, confident, and critical use of ICT for work, leisure, learning, and communications. According to Eurostats, the five pillars to measure digital competence are safety, communication, content creation, information processing, and problem solving. A lot of people in India and many other developing countries who use internet for the first time on smartphones and not PCs may be termed digitally illiterate as per structured and standardized digital literacy testing. However, they do possess some level of digital competency. Let me show you some examples. There are language and digitally illiterate tuk-tuk drivers in India that comfortably use apps like Ola or Uber on their smartphones to find customers online. These apps are graphic rich, have a red color for rejecting a passenger and a green for accepting one. The app has simple icons to complete a ride or to call and coordinate with a customer. Some of them may never know how to use a keyboard or may never need to learn how to work a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. But they do need an interface, the internet, an internet-enabled smartphone, and some level of digital competence to improve their daily lives. AgroStars is an agricultural technology company that trains communities of farmers to buy seeds, fertilizers, and manures using an app. The process is quite personal. The company holds training sessions with farmers to use this app to place orders online. The goods are delivered via cash on delivery and not just via credit card and a payment gateway. This eliminates middlemen and the farmer saves cost. Many such farmers may have never heard of a mouse or wouldn't know what it is if they would see one, but they still know how to use an internet-enabled smartphone and possess some level of digital competency. There are farmers in India that use WhatsApp groups to share images and videos of community water reserves, sell seeds, and exchange information. Sharing videos and images via WhatsApp is super simple and eliminates a lot of language literacy barriers. In these cases as well, the farmers are termed digitally illiterate as per standardized testing. They may have never heard of what's a PowerPoint presentation or even have an email ID. But by understanding the rich and diverse competencies of existing users that are online, we may be able to better design initiatives that bridge the gap. Understanding the existing users' diverse digital competencies could also help us target solutions more effectively to the right groups. This brings us to our two research questions. 1. How do we identify and evaluate the efficacy of existing initiatives that aim to bridge the digital divide in developing countries with a strong focus on India? 2. What is the current state of digital competencies in India? The broad problem is that existing government, academic, or corporate initiatives may not be adequate at bridging the digital divide in India. The specific problem is the inability to effectively measure the current state of digital competencies in developing countries with a strong focus on India. A mixed method research will be conducted in two parts. The first one will be an exploratory research to evaluate the efficacy of existing initiatives that aim to bridge the digital divide. The second part of the research will be a survey designed to analyze the current state of digital competencies in India. The first step is to identify the various popular initiatives that aim to bridge the digital divide in India. This will be done by exploring past work, interviewing government and non-profit sector, online research, focus groups, suggestions from colleagues and academicians. The second step would be to identify a framework that could be used to evaluate the efficacy of initiatives that aim to bridge the digital divide. At the moment, it's unclear which method I will use, but the rough idea here is to use IDEO's HCD toolkit, which is a framework designed to evaluate socially challenging projects into what's desirable, feasible, and viable. This will be used to compile a suggestion that could improve the efficacy of such initiatives. The second part of this research is a survey designed to analyze the current state of digital competencies in India. This aims to answer the second question: what is the current state of digital competencies in India? The sub-questions are: how do we evaluate the current state of digital competencies in India? What is the redefined current state of digital competencies in India? What are the correlates of digital competency in India? Measuring the current state of digital competencies in India could potentially help us provide suggestions that improve the efficacy of initiatives that aim to bridge the digital divide. The first step is to identify the attributes which enhance digital competency and the concurrent effectiveness of this competency in bridging the digital divide. This will be done by way of an in-depth literature review of existing digital competency evaluation tests or methods, and by checking if they can be relevantly applied to the contextual scenarios of end users in India. Based on the findings during the course of the literature review of frameworks that evaluate digital competence, a relevant questionnaire will be designed to effectively evaluate digital competencies across four categories: digital identity, digital practices, digital skills, and digital awareness. 19 questions will be designed across 4 levels of Beatham and Sharp's framework and across 5 domains of digital competency based on the Eurostat's Digital Competence Assessment tool. This survey will be multilingual and will be based on smartphones instead of personal computers. Each question will be asked approximately 1,000 times each to participants spanning different contexts of the population from 3 cities, 3 towns, and 3 villages via digital competence test free Wi-Fi zones from different states in India. The results will be evaluated to organize our understanding of current state of digital competency in India and find a weaker group within its diverse population. Evaluation of groups will focus on 4 main demographic factors: gender, age, location, and nation group. Main factors will be further divided into 3 variable classes. Analysis will utilize 2x3 and 2x2 factorial models to evaluate the correlates of average digital literacy and demographic context. These analyses will help us identify the weaker groups as those with low competencies. For example, it could further our knowledge on the gender divide or rural divide versus urban divide, or even the age divides. This will then further our understanding on the current state of digital divide in India, and since any parallels with literacy divide should become immediately apparent. This is a brief timeline of my research. In the first semester, I plan to extensively investigate information associated with initiatives that aim to qualitatively or quantitatively bridge the digital divide in India. Literature reviews and in-depth reviews will focus on challenging the efficacy of such initiatives and developing strong suggestions for improving them. The second and third semester will be spent towards designing and deploying a relevant and effective method to evaluate digital competency in India, and so that it can be applied to other developing countries as well, using survey research. Results from the questionnaire surveyed will be analyzed in 4th and 5th semester. In parallel, I will begin working on publications from the literature review. The final semester will be invested towards compiling all the research findings into final publications. The last semester will be spent towards finalizing the thesis and preparing its defense. For each research question, there will be one manuscript for theoretical background establishment and one for detailing the results. The outcome of this research includes systematic evaluation and identification of ways to improve the efficacy of existing initiatives that aim to bridge the digital divide in developing countries with a strong focus on India. This could potentially help researchers, social technical planners, or IT businesses to create relevant, usable, and useful solutions that bridge the digital divide in a context-specific manner. Along with the improvements of initiative, it's important to target them correctly. By furthering our understanding on the current gaps in the level of digital competencies in India, the initiatives that aim to bridge this divide can be designed better and be better targeted towards the right groups instead of teaching farmers how to identify a mouse. Consequently, the development of a framework to contextually evaluate the digital competencies in India could also be adjusted and applied to other developing countries. From a commercial standpoint, this could be useful for internet service providers in measuring competencies and mapping data demands between few demographics before deploying large infrastructure. Thank you for your time.